and then present your request. The board will ask any questions they may have. Then anyone from the audience wishing to speak to the proposal will be asked to come forward again to the podium and voice their opinions. Each side will have 10 minutes to speak if there are opposing sides to a particular problem. All comments should be about the project being presented, not a venue to air personal grievances. If you hear the gavel, you are out of order. If you persist, you will be removed from the meeting. Once your request is heard and the board's decision is rendered, you may leave the meeting. However, if you have questions for staff, please wait until after the meeting is over to ask them, or you may contact staff the following day. Once public testimony for a particular item has concluded, the members of the board will deliberate and render their decision. Members with a personal or financial interest in any request are required to recuse themselves from voting. All decisions by the Architecture Review Board are final. Any person having a request for a certificate of appropriateness denied by the board may appeal that denial to the Montgomery County Circuit Court. Any such appeal filed with the Circuit Court within 30 days of the receipt of the final notice from the board. We have a whopping 7 members present tonight. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce them. Cedric Campbell, Elizabeth Brown, Jake Johnson, Barry Robinson is not here, John Hayden, Hillary Morgan, Katie Williams, and Kalia Bell. Our land use staff is Christy Anderson, Russell Stringer, Ethan Fowler, and Tanya Ingram. The minutes of the last meeting were distributed to you all, and I'm sure reviewed. I actually reviewed them. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, our first project for tonight is Chandra Arthur at 1339 South Perry Street, and I understand from Christy that she is still assembling her materials?
Correct. She did not submit materials for this meeting.
All right, well, we will see her next month then. Second, Lana Cabasa, Cottage Hill, 422 Heron Street.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is the third time I'm here, so
You're an old friend by now.
hopefully third time a charm. I believe that Christy had said that if I would submit a picture of the way the rail would look, that might satisfy the board. So I did, and hopefully she'll put that up here.
He looks like he's rolling down right now. I'm watching him.
I think that's it. That's what it looks like from the street.
Is there anyone from the audience to speak to this project? Comments from the board?
Is there going to be any, I'm sorry, is there going to be any further alterations, construction? I think this was probably our concern. Is this it? Is this the final product, the photograph?
Well, I just wanted to get the house dried in. It's been empty for 15 years. And so my main concern was just getting the water leaks done away with so that I can preserve the house. I'm not sure what else I'm going to do on the outside of the house.
maybe I wasn't clear. I know that you can't predict the future. You may next year decide you want to do something, and if you do, please.
Yeah, I'll have to
But
resubmit, right?
as far as what your plans are for that you submitted, this is your final product right here? The railing and the flat?
Yes, sir, the
Okay.
railing, yeah, the picture of the railing, which,
Well, what-
that's not it, but it was scrolled through.
Any further comments? May I have a motion on the project?
I'll move to approve as presented.
All in favor? Opposed? It was indeed the charm.
Thank you very much.
Kalia, was that you second? Was that your second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, project number 3, Laura Knapp, Cottage Hill, request for approval of a rear and side yard fencing for a property located at 1606 Madison Avenue. And you have already appeared at the podium.
Good evening. My name is Nina Knapp. Laura Knapp is my wife. She's unable to make it tonight. She's sick. We reside at 1606. We bought the house in 2018. We're just asking basically to replace the chain link fences that are on the side that are falling apart with the wood fences that we've already enclosed in the back of the house. If you scroll down to the next page, I believe you can see where we started the fence, but we were told that we need to ask as far as continuing that fence line up the side since it can't be seen from Madison. The fence will just continue to replace the chain link fence and the side fence to the side of us that's at 1612 Madison Avenue. That fence is just falling down. It's a wooden fence, but we'll make it all uniform. 6-foot fence, nothing crazy. The fence will be behind that first window, so you can still see the entire house and it's not going to be obstructive. We have 2 small children, dogs, cats. We're just trying to keep them all in the backyard and away from Madison.
Okay?
Do you have any gates on there? You're not.
I do
I'm
have
assuming
gates.
you're having a gate, but
Yes, ma'am. There's going to be 2 side gates to the side of the house, and that's going to be in the first one. This one is a little modern for probably what we're doing, but it's the same idea. It will have the same insert as far as that glass to where you'll be able to see through it. It might be opaque. We haven't fully decided as far as that goes, but you will be able to see through to the back of the yard.
This is a really handsome privacy fence, too.
Thank you.
I don't say that often.
You do not.
When you love your home, you want to spend all the good things on it, so
Yep.
it's worth it.
I just spent a few $1,000s loving my house, as a matter of fact, recently.
All right. Any comments from the audience on this project? Further comments from the board? May I have a motion?
I approve to accept as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Go and do good work.
Thank y'all.
Okay, our next project is on Felder Avenue. And I, of course, went to 5. 704 Felder Avenue. Paul Schmidt, one of those houses that whenever you do anything, everybody in the neighborhood notices.
Is going to know what's happening, huh?
That's
Well,
right.
that's why I'm here to ask permission before I do anything.
You were getting a gold star
Thank
already.
you.
There you go. So, we're, you can see the house here, I guess the way it was 10 years ago, huh, Christie, with the tree on the side where the current parking area is. We would like to remove that parking area and to add the tree back there.
Good deal.
So I see in the note there were some recommendations, and we'll follow those recommendations to be able to do that. But it's along Cloverdale is where the parking area is. It just doesn't look good. So we would like to remove that, put the curb back in there.
Maybe
And-
if you had a Mini, it would work.
What's that?
Maybe if you had a Mini, it would work.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yep. Here's a little bit of the site plan that you can, oh, my house and all my stuff doesn't show up on here.
Let me see. Oh, it didn't copy very well in their packet either.
Yeah.
We know where the house is.
I have some good pictures here. Pass those down. So it's printed on the front and back to save a little paper. So if you can see on the site plan, you can see the area that will remove the parking area, and then over to the right of it, between us and the Richardsons at 728, we're asking to add a carport to replace the shed that's in the back. The driveway will be off of Felder then. Okay? And I think there should be some pictures on here of some of the detail that's on the house, on the front porch. We'll have that same detail on the rafters and that in the carport, and also on the braces.
Okay?
Okay.
You know, I've pondered how to solve this problem for a long time, and this is a really good solution.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, everything has made it hard to do something sensible with this.
Yeah.
Are there any comments from the audience about this project? Mr. Benton, welcome.
My name is Jeff Benton, and I'm representing the Old Cloverdale Association. Mr. Schmidt has done it correctly. He's come to the September and the October Cloverdale meeting. He came with drawings like this in color. Everyone at those meetings was thrilled with what he's recommending to do. We're glad that he picked up the arts and craft brackets to put on his carport. We were opposed to what happened before, and the person who killed that tree by cutting the roots was supposed, this man said, "You will replace it." They've escaped. So we're glad that that tree is going back. Those curb cuts will be replaced with curbing. We're so happy.
Excellent. Excellent. Are there any more comments or questions from the board? Then may I have a motion?
I move to approve as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? We could hand this out as an example of what to do.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, our next project is, have we gotten to Matco already? All right. And since the audience has been so quiet thus far, I would assume that they're all here because of this project.
Madam Chair, I will have to recuse myself on this agenda item due to my involvement in the Cottage Hill Neighborhood Foundation.
Okay? Greetings.
Hi. Good evening. My name is Neil Weber. I am the Director of Development for MAPCO. I'm here this evening to present our case for the approval of our development at the property located on Holt, Clay, and Heron. I want to thank all the members of the board for allowing us to present tonight, as well as all the community members that have been actively engaged in this process as well. We did put together a presentation.
Mike, could you bring that up?
there we
And before you start, when we start your clock ticking, what I had discussed with the chair and had discussed with you is that we'll do this in two pieces, so you can have 10 minutes to discuss the demolition portion of it, and then you can have 10 minutes to discuss the replacement plan. So we would ask that those be considered as separate issues, because if they're not going to approve the demolition, then there's no point in the replacement plan. Does that make sense? But that
Yes.
that will also give you 10 more minutes to focus on the replacement that you didn't really have a good opportunity to do last time.
Good, I'll need every minute.
Okay.
So we put together a presentation for this evening to kind of both show some of the rationale for us choosing this site and also the replacement design that we're intending to put here. If you could go to the next slide, please. The first, I apologize, this will be a little bit commingled between portions of the demolition and the replacement, but the first slide is kind of highlighting the design of the store. This is a new prototype for us. There are only 8 of these stores that we've built so far. Only one of those is located in Montgomery. This store has already won 2 International Retail Design Awards. I think one of the key elements in this design is its transparency and openness. You can see from these images, one of the key elements is the amount of glazing. We are trying to maximize on the window space on these stores, floor-to-ceiling windows. We also even add skylights to the restrooms just to bring in that natural light. We feel the glazing and the amount of glazing allows for us to both show a level of transparency between the interior and exterior, also maximizing on natural light, which we think enhances the customer experience. These stores also, and this store in particular, will be offering a kind of a basic grocery offering as well as a QSR prepared food offering. Our restrooms, which you can see in the upper left corner, are all tile.
I'm sorry, Mr. Weber, I thought you were going to discuss the demolition first.
That will be in the next slide. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your email and I kind of mixed them together.
I mean, if you want to mix them together, that'll give you 10 minutes total. That's up to you.
Okay.
Because I think, Ms. Anderson, if we don't approve the demolition of the existing buildings, the issue concerning the construction of site plan for the MAPCO is moot.
Understood.
Okay.
I think if we go ahead and then skip to the 2 more slides, I believe. So these are images of the existing site. There are currently 2 structures there on the site. One of them, the owner has already been requested by the city to demolish. The other is the former Stearns building. The current owner of this store, or this location, began taking possession of these parcels in 2001. The Stearns building, located here on Holt, has been vacant since 2017. I think we've provided in your packets a letter from Cole & Cole describing the characteristics of this store and their opinion of the lack of architectural and historic character. These buildings are also already in severe disrepair, so what we're offering here is an ability to redevelop the site before the building falls into further disrepair and the owner gets another letter from the city asking for the demolition of this site and this building as well. You can see from the picture in the lower right-hand side, there has been some homeless kind of encamping along the front of the building. Many of those trees have been removed to kind of open up and kind of discourage that type of activity. But I do think that will, once again, without development, be overgrown and promote that type of activity. So I think, from the standpoint of this building, this is a 1,900 square foot building on a challenge site in that there is a 12-foot to 14-foot embankment in the rear. The ability to rehab this site as it stands right now and provide adequate parking for a 1,900 square foot building currently does not exist. For a 1,900 square foot retail facility, you would need approximately 78 parking spots. And due to the topography, that would either have to be done at a much higher level or would have to be street parking, which inevitably would kind of lead to those 78 parking spots, some of them creeping more into the residential area. So, the site as it exists right now is not conducive to development. There does need to be extensive excavation in order just to keep it up to the requirements for parking. And that goes without saying that the rehabilitation cost of this building, probably do not justify, the end user that you may find willing to locate in a site located across the street from I-65. So I think there probably is not that much more to say on, our justification or rationale in the demolition of these structures, except to try to, hopefully offer the ability to develop it into a more lively intersection as people enter and pass by Montgomery. That's really all I have on the demolition. Actually, I take that back. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry.
Mike, one more, please.
Why we are, or I'm sorry, if you go to the next slide, again, I apologize for this. One other reason is, this is kind of an aerial of the Cottage Hill neighborhood through the years. And what you see from 1972, which is the approximate time that I-65 was built, as well as a few years later when the historic Cottage Hill was established by the city of Montgomery. What you'll see through the years, this is kind of showing that this site, because of its, I think because of its proximity to the interstate, because it is bounded on the north and the south by Heron and by Clay, that, with those arterial, those kind of feeder roads into downtown, it has kind of stymied the development in this area. You will see that, up until probably, I believe, what I could calculate, the convenience store that was to our south was demolished somewhere between 2003 and 2005. This site has had vacant lots on all sides of it, for almost 20 years now. And I think, our hope is to come in and try to, develop a new store there, but that would only be done through the demolition of these buildings that have been there and unchanged for, at a minimum, the last 50 years. That is the final part.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board? We can have it both times, so that's all right. Any questions or comments from the audience? We're interested in hearing from you.
Good evening. My name is Jake Johnson. I'm a resident of Cottage Hill and also the Cottage Hill Neighborhood Foundation president. I've prepared a few comments for tonight. Ultimately, it touches on the demolition of the existing site, the existing structures, as well as our thoughts, the neighborhood's thoughts on the proposed redevelopment as well. So I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but ultimately it will be applicable to what we've just seen and what we will see in the future. I'll go ahead and state what may be obvious. The overwhelming majority of our neighborhood is strongly opposed to this development. I have with me a petition with nearly 300 signatures from the neighborhood and surrounding areas. The number of signatures continues to grow by the day. Additionally, I'd like to ask anyone here tonight, if you're here in opposition against this project, please stand. As you can see, this is a very important project to the neighborhood and Montgomery as a whole. Our opposition to the development of the MAPCO gas station is ultimately multifaceted. First, the lack of respect for city process by the petitioners is extremely concerning. The neighborhood's opposition to MAPCO first began when the owner petitioned City Council for the removal of the subject property from our historic district. The city attorney made it clear that City Council did not have the authority to alter or modify the existing historic districts. The neighborhood threatened legal action if City Council moved forward with the petition. Ultimately, the petition landed on City Council's agenda in early 2022, despite the legal implications. The council did thankfully refer any decision regarding the property back to the Architecture Review Board. Here we are tonight. We chose to live in our neighborhood because of the protections in place by the Architectural Review Board. City process was established for a reason, and it must be followed regardless of how many zeros are at the end of an investment. Second, the subject site should not be treated as an interstate site. Of our originally designated historic district, only 9 blocks remain. Of those 9 blocks, 3 border the interstate. The subject property should be approached as an integral part of the fabric of our neighborhood, especially due to our small size. Our neighborhood has the unfortunate luck of being bordered by Interstate 65 by no choice of our own. Our western blocks were once lost to the construction of the interstate, and the current proposal further sacrifices the neighborhood boundary to the interstate. Additionally, the proposed development destroys what is our neighborhood's namesake hill and turns its back on the neighborhood. The subject site and the location of the proposed gas station will materially impair the architectural and historic value of our neighborhood. Third, this development will severely degrade the quality of our district. The Cottage Hill neighborhood has rich precedents for the correct street scale and adjacent buildings, the orientation of structures, and the setback of each lot. The current proposal not only ignores the precedents in the neighborhood, but also removes the existing street frontage that serves as a strong edge to our neighborhood. Additionally, the proposed earthwork eliminates the possibility of future development on the subject block, converting almost 1/3 of the site to a sloped bank. Finally, the subject property serves as one of the most visible sites within the city. All traffic exiting 65 via exit 172 passes by. Do we want residents and tourists alike to experience a standard interstate experience synonymous with suburban America, or do we want to create a true gateway to our city with architecture that is representative of what Montgomery was, is, and is becoming? If the precedent is set that exit 172 is equal to exit 3 or exit 6 or exit 9, what becomes of the Heron Street corridor in Cottage Hill? The neighborhood stands strongly opposed to the development of the Mapco gas station. To quote a fellow petitioner who summarized our stance in a far more eloquent way than I ever could, let it be understood, my neighbors and I are not against development in and around the already much truncated historic neighborhood of Cottage Hill, including new development or development that attracts tax revenue. Nor is our opposition driven solely by property value considerations. Crime, pollution, noise, safety, traffic, irreversible land destruction, and ground pollution are also some of our concerns. Mostly, however, I believe that we would also like for development to be strengthening of and building onto the overall character of what little is left of this verdant and beautiful, peaceful, walkable, and yet living and breathing gem of a neighborhood downtown. We have scars throughout and around our neighborhood due to short-sighted decisions made by individuals who are not truly invested in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood sits in the crosshairs of major redevelopment occurring downtown at the Hilltop Arms Building and at the Whitewater Park. The redevelopment of this subject property sets the precedence, once again, not only for the Heron Street corridor and Cottage Hill, but also for the edges of all of our historic districts. The city of Montgomery must realize that not all development is good development, and not all development can fit within our historic districts. Thank you.
All right, I have not been keeping a clock, so
Russell's timing. We got 5 more minutes if anyone else has to comment on the demolition portion of this petition.
okay.
See, I've got company, so I'll speak quickly. My name is Nicholas Bartel. I'm over on Martha Street. I live in the neighborhood. Just solely speaking to the demolition, I'm sympathetic to what the gentleman from MAPCO said and what the property owner is looking at. This is a site that the building covers the entire lot, basically. I understand the parking challenges. I do think, as they talk about parking and the only possibility for parking is street parking, they are overlooking the vacant gas station site, which is directly south of the property that they're looking at. And so again, it's not impossible to get property elsewhere. It's simply not included within what's owned by the current parcel owner. With respect to all of that aside, before I moved down here, I lived in Detroit, and I lived just north of downtown Detroit in a historic area. And they spent most of the time I lived there in the process of redevelopment of a historic site across the street from me, which was supposed to be a 1 or 2 year project where they put up a mixed-use condo and apartment and retail facility. The reason I bring this up is we're talking about excavating about half of Cottage Hill, which is the name of the neighborhood, and it's the hill that gives it its charm, but it's also an actual hill that people have been living on and working around for centuries. We don't have any idea what's in the hill when they start digging into it with the excavation they're talking about, and you potentially open a can of worms. I ended up living across the street from a Superfund site that stalled out for about 4 years, while they had to go down 4 or 5 feet below the topsoil to get all of the contaminated ground out. There's residential property there. We don't know what all happened at the Stern Furniture site. There's potentially fuel oil bunkers. There's potentially coal bunkers. We don't know what sort of environmental remediation we're looking at. We don't know what kind of Native American sites we're looking at. My concern, aside from the gas station, and you'll hear from me again when we talk about the proposed replacement, is as much as I'm not thrilled with the prospect of a gas station, I'm really not thrilled with the prospect of half of a gas station for 4 years while we do a historic assessment or an archaeological assessment of something that comes up when they start to excavate that hill. I cannot stress enough how opposed I am, and I think everybody I've talked to in the neighborhood, which is most of my neighbors are, with the possibility that not only we lose the hill, but the possibility that there's things that haven't been contemplated or spec'd out or identified in that site that could cause massive delays and massive impact to this project, or cause the cost overruns to make it simply financially not feasible. And I appreciate all of your time, and I'll defer whatever's left to the other gentleman.
My name is Charlie Colvin. I'm with the Cloverdale Idlewild Association. While we're not directly tied into this neighborhood, we do want to express our support for their position literally across the board. We think their concern for the neighborhood and concern for the transition from the interstate into their neighborhood is valid. We just want to let you know we support them wholeheartedly.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Calloway, and I represent the Garden District. We face some of the same issues as Cottage Hill in that our neighborhood abuts Interstate 85. We also have major corridor streets of Court Street, Fairview Avenue, and Norman Bridge Road that surround us, which causes considerable erosion to our boundaries. And so for that reason, we also support the position of the Cottage Hill neighborhood.
I guess we're all doing this at this part of the meeting. I'm Rob Hesse, president of Old Cloverdale Association, and I'm also on the Historic Preservation Commission for the city. Old Cloverdale Association supports Cottage Hill in stopping the MAPCO station as designed. Personally, I think they're missing a great opportunity here to put in a design gas station that could fit with the neighborhood and to work with the neighborhood. And our edges are very important. Once we start eroding the edges of our historic districts, where does it stop? Like I said, I think they're missing a wonderful opportunity to be a good neighbor, and the way they've gone about doing this shows what kind of neighbor they're going to be in the future to Cottage Hill and all of Montgomery. Thank you.
That's time.
All right, comments from
That's
the board?
time, unless the chair wants to recognize you, Mr. Patton.
I'm George Patton, and I've been in Cottage Hill since the late 70s, early 80s, and I see some of my neighbors that's been here the same time as we have, and we oppose this filling station. We got rid of one in the 80s, the spur station, and all they had was robberies, people hanging around there at night. We could not go to sleep. All we heard was gunshots. So we oppose the filling station completely. Thank you.
that it?
That's time,
All right.
yes. Suzanne, that's time unless the chair recognizes you.
Yes, I'm Suzanne Black.
Suzanne, the comment period is over unless the chair recognizes you. The 10-minute comment period is over unless the chair invites you to speak. There will be
Suzanne,
another opportunity.
Suzanne, please have an opportunity to speak, but let's limit it to 2 minutes. Can you do that?
Suzanne, come back.
You can do
2
it.
minutes.
You can speak.
2 minutes.
I'm recognizing you, Suzanne Black.
I'm Suzanne Black. I live at 644 Martha Street. We bought our house in 1980. We've been there well, we came as the young people, and now I'm the old person. So we have abided by the rules and regulations set forth. I don't understand that somebody would pick a historic district to put a gas station. They've cut all the beautiful crepes from in front of it down to the ground. I just wondered, did they have permission, Russell?
It's probably not big enough to have required a permit.
Oh, okay. We are not only recognized by the city as a historic district, but nationally. We are on the National Register for Historic Places. So please keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. Comments now from the board.
I would just add that as we discussed at the previous meeting and Mr. Weber reiterated, the only real issue here on demolition is the old Stern Brothers building at 204 North Holt Street, because the other one has been flagged for demolition by code enforcement. And once code enforcement says dangerous, it takes us out of the picture because life safety trumps that. So the only building under consideration for y'all is the Stern Brothers building on Holt Street, that fronts Holt Street.
Okay, so the white house
The house is one that Housing Codes has said needs to go.
It's coming-
It's structurally,
it's coming down.
It's structurally
Okay, that's fine.
unsound. So, yes.
I would like to say something. I think that that's not quite correct, because what we're talking about also taking down is the Cottage Hill, of which Cottage Hills is named. It's a site feature that they plan to raise.
Yes.
And that is something that is also on the table for demolition. And while it's not a structure, it is a piece of the property in the neighborhood that must be taken into consideration when you talk about demolition.
And I think
so while
I was-
you may talk about a house being demolished or a dilapidated
Well,
structure, the property does not need to have the demolition maybe set forth here, because I think that's also part of this demolition discussion.
Well, would it be part of the demolition or part of the site plan, which would incorporate?
They kind of go together.
They go together.
Are you saying you can't demolish if we were to grant the request?
My concern is give an inch, get a mile.
Well, if they go beyond what's approved, somebody's going to get hit with fines, maybe even charges. So
Right.
that the city can come in and
I
I know, look, I understand, once a hill is gone, it's like trees. Once it's gone, and no amount of complaining or wailing is going to bring it back.
I think it needs to be in this discussion, because if the building goes, we're talking, the hill goes, and the hill to me is an important aspect of this whole neighborhood.
And I think, I was thinking, like John, it's site work, And I think you could define what the parameters of demolition are if you were solely talking about demolition of structure without any movement of earth. Then, I mean, that's something that you can define as what you're, if you chose to approve demolition, what you are approving as part of that. Because the site work isn't required unless this particular plan is executed. So, I mean, you all can define that, whether it's just that demolition with the acceptance of a suitable replacement plan constitutes the demolition of that structure.
Okay, let me ask a question. Someone mentioned about parking, and they mentioned an old gas station. Could you go to 5T, please? Photograph 5T.
I think it was Mr. Patton.
5T please, sir.
Yeah.
Because this shows obviously a concrete pad that I don't know if this is part of the old Stern building or if this is possibly the old gas station that was mentioned earlier.
It's not the gas station.
That's what I thought.
It's what?
So this would
I
not
thought the gas station was across the street.
be subject to the demolition. Is my understanding.
The gas station is across the street.
This is, I mean, I want to be very, very clear about what, now, I understand, I guess Mr. Weber is asking that, that would be part of the demolition, but we've been talking about the Stern building. I guess this is all part of one.
5T appears to be on the rise behind the Stern Brothers building.
Yes, that's
Yes,
what it
that's
appears to be
correct.
for me. Yes.
That's correct. If
Okay.
you look at 5U, you can see the tops of the back of Stern Brothers and this slab.
5U?
So it's up a
Yeah.
rise. It's on the hill.
Yeah, it looks like it's on the hill.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not
Yes.
opposed to the demolition. I do think, as Ms. Anderson said, it's whether it's being replaced with something that's in kind for the neighborhood, and that's my challenge and charge. You know, the city's undertaking a block by block plan right now on redeveloping downtown Montgomery, and so where the bigger concern is, you know, if this building is being demolished, are we replacing it with something that would be in kind and appropriate for the development or for the neighborhood?
My opinion at this point is I don't necessarily have a concern with the demolition of the actual structure. The real concern that I have is the demolition of the area in which the structures reside. Okay? There has not been a plan presented, a formalized plan presented that shows the amount of excavation and the amount of site work that's going to be taken into place as they demo the building. Okay? As you demo it, something has to come into place. Okay? Your grading's going to change, something's going to happen. That plan has not been presented. So my concern with approving the demolition at this time is that we do not have a formalized plan of what that demolition is going to do and what it's going to look like when that demolition happens.
Well, I'll just go ahead and say right now, if I were to move or make a motion for demolition, it would be contingent on a suitable replacement and site plan. Now, I'm not saying that what's being proposed tonight is a suitable plan. I'm just saying you can't have one without the other, because I'm looking at this also back in 5T, and there are a number of trees. I don't know if Mr. Stringer's looked at it, but I cannot imagine these trees would not be seriously affected or killed if the demo was done. And I know there's, you know, we're kind of getting into the weeds here, but
We're not going to dig into that. We're going to take in those buildings.
I want to add to what you said and encompass it with what the gentleman from the audience said. when we know because of other structures around Montgomery that have been erected over the years, that there are Superfund sites near here, like, like they're everywhere. Because we don't know what is in the ground, how do we address ensuring that we aren't opening a can of worms, that we aren't going into something that is more historical than we actually know? How do we approach that? Because this is not, it's just not typical. I mean, and it's so sad because if you just jumped across 65, it's a totally different situation. However, this particular block, this particular hill is different. And while we've been here and we've been going back and forth and things have changed, I still don't think I don't think that MAPCO has taken the full responsibility of really and truly making this project community friendly. It's really pretty, I get it, but there are just so many different dynamics that need to be broken down bit by bit before we say yes. And I'm not comfortable with saying yes because there are too many unknowns at this time.
And I understand that. I know it's difficult. I've reviewed the materials many times to kind of keep these separate. Demolition is one issue, and the other issue is new construction. I guess, again, my leaning toward, okay, you can approve the demolition subject to a suitable site plan. What is a suitable site plan? Well, the only plan in place right now is the one that Mr. Weber is going to present to us. And depending on how we rule, if we rule for it, then, okay, they go forward. If we rule against it, these buildings are going to stay. Well, the house will be taken down, I guess, at some point by the city because it's condemned. And then that would be, if that were to happen, if it were to, request by MAPCO denied, then it would be up to the landowner to come back later with, I want to demo this because there's someone else that wants to buy it, and here's their site plan, please, we do this process all over again. But in looking at it, there's another photograph, 5R. It looks like that the building itself, and understand that there's a retaining wall that's about to fall apart. I don't know about demolition. I probably am talking out of school. Someone that was very careful and knew what they were doing and took their time doing it could take the building down without disturbing the pad on top, because I'm not talking about, they could take the building down without disturbing the hill. Again, it would probably be a long, tedious process. And again, once you get into what's underneath that building that, was active for decades, who knows?
I want to make 2 points here. I'm not an archaeologist, but I did sit next to one for 25 years, so I learned something by osmosis. I would be surprised if we found any intact Native American sites on this hill. There were a lot of great sites in Montgomery, most of them obliterated by the parking lots that are in front of Union Station and such. But the Indians tended to do things down in the floodplain and then move to higher ground when it was flood season. So this would be a place that they would have gone. However, we built a school here. We built sites here. The school was a substantial building, so there's been a lot of ground disturbance. I would suspect that most of what we would find would be 19th century foundations and the remains of buildings. The houses that were built are usually on piers. That doesn't leave a whole lot. Right. But I think that we'd probably find a lot pertaining to the school since it was such a substantial building. And now I've completely forgot what my other thing I wanted to say was. It's terrible being old.
Word.
What, sir?
I understand now.
Yes. So I've said that, and I'm sure the other comment will come to me eventually. Maybe this is what it was. I don't completely agree with Les Cole about the fact that this building lacks historic integrity. I think it was listed as a contributing structure in the National Register nomination. I think if somebody came to me tomorrow and said, I want to rehab this building, can we do a tax credit project, that I can write up a credible part one and a part two to rehab this building. Now, the second side of that is I can also see that this building is a building that is in terrible maintenance. And this would have to be a rehab that somebody did because they loved it, rather like the apartments for the Dan Pratt Mill, and it's hard to see a lot of people coming out of the woods to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in a building for which I don't see any financial return. So as far as holding it for demolition, yes, it's historic, and we probably need to do a minimal recording on that so that we'll have a record of the building. But I don't see it as a building that could be rehabilitated in a financially profitable way. And of course, that's how we live here. You got to build it, it's got to have a use, and you've got to be able to afford it. I don't think anybody could afford to rehab this building and have a use. And I'm so glad I remembered that.
Well, and I think one of the grounds that we could use that a building can be demolitioned if it's, I think the rule is saying, based on considerations of reasonable justice and equity. In other words, it may be a historic building, but it would cost more to restore it than to just build it.
Yes.
I mean, we all would like, most of us here probably put money into old homes and old neighborhoods and historic neighborhoods, and one day, if we happen to move, we're going to sell them, and we hope to make a profit. And that's great. But I don't know anybody that would come in and rehab a building knowing that they could probably find another site somewhere and for less money build something newer, nicer, bigger.
Considering that the nature of the hill and its importance, does it not have its own autonomy? I mean, because of what it is, where it is, the name, is it just like any other dirt that's anywhere else?
Yes. From the National Register point of view, from a historic preservation point of view, yes, it's dirt. Yeah. Now, the hill, what's left of the hill, the fact that it is a hill would have some significance. But no, dirt is,
but
even George Washington's dirt is his, just dirt.
But still, when you go past that dirt part, I mean, I get the dirt because I'm looking at all the dirt that's right here.
Yep.
But when you call it Centennial Hill and it's a hill, I mean, where is the line of demarcation between dirt and hill? Because if it just can be done, then what's the purpose in us being a board that protects the historic value of hills, dirt, and everything else that's old?
So kind of like the trees, if the trees have a significance when they're a certain size, the hill has a significance.
Well, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a landscape feature, and
Yes.
the city code explicitly states that you all have to grant approval for any excavation or grading that takes place within the historic district. So it does address that excavation and grading is part of, is an activity that requires a certificate of appropriateness.
So, to me, the grades that we see now, yes, that there is a rise in it, and it provides a hill. But even if the grades that we're looking at are lower, it still will be a hill. Cottage Hill sits above most of Montgomery. Again, for me, it's the suitable replacement. But I could see a development that comes in this area that removes some soil, and it would not be, it would be acceptable to me. And so I will not just say, hey, the keeping the rise as it exists today is more important than anything else, because it will still be a hill if we have the right development in this place.
Based on sitting here listening, it sounds like, and I guess my opinion is, the structures themselves aren't the concern. The concern is, of course, what comes after. Okay? So
Right.
you're taking it from the two positions, okay? And we're looking at it specifically on demolition. My opinion would be that we approve the request for demolition of the existing structures conditioned upon the approval of a suitable replacement plan for that location, okay? And then basically the demolition and approval can only be granted, okay? So, and a permit for demolition can only be pulled if we approve the replacement plan for the property, right?
Correct. I mean, I thought I'd kind of said that earlier, but yes, I mean,
So-
demolition is dependent on presenting a site plan that is acceptable. If the site plan is not acceptable, the building stays. You can't build without, you can't demo without bringing something in that's approved.
The only thing I would add to that is that I think that we need to record the building according to HAB standards, just photographs, not drawings. I think drawings would be overkill. But 4x5 negative archival photographs submitted in the proper form to the Library of Congress, as well as our, I think we have a list of places we usually send things. Dr. Christie?
The best repository we would have locally, I think, would be the Montgomery County Archives,
Okay.
because they have expanded the types of materials they want to collect related to Montgomery history.
Okay. All right, can we take all of those ideas? Starting with your idea, you think we can come up with a...
I move to approve the request for demolition of the existing structures conditioned upon their approval of a suitable replacement plan for this location. Final demolition approval shall not be granted, and a demolition permit shall not be issued until a replacement plan for the property is approved and until photographs have been submitted that document the existing conditions of the site and the buildings on the site to the Library of Congress and to other locations noted within the city of Montgomery.
All right. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. 5, 1.
All right.
So that motion carries.
Well, you didn't ask her if she was against it or if she
Okay.
was abstaining.
How are you voting, Ms. Bell?
Opposed? Are you opposed or abstaining?
I'm opposed.
All right. And I respect that.
Okay.
Katie is this close. She's almost. It is hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, we get paid to make the tough decisions.
Yeah, yes, we certainly do. Without compensation. I read that every week.
And again, I think part of the next piece of your presentation addresses the site plan issues where you can dig into the excavation, whether or not that's appropriate. Should it be torn down? Should it be built up? I don't know. I'm not an engineer. But that's, I think you can, he will tell you what those plans are. And I think there's in the packet, there's a cutaway view. I don't know if it's in your slideshow, but you did submit that kind of cut view of the hillside that's in their packet. So, you ready for part 2, replacement plan, new construction?
Can we go ahead and pull up the presentation?
Can you bring the PowerPoint back up, Mike?
While they're bringing up the presentation, there were a couple elements I'd like to clarify. First, from the previous presentation that we had back in December of 2021, it was stated that we were going to purchase this property. This is actually going to be a lease property, so I wanted to make sure that that clarification was clear for everyone that was at that hearing. The second thing I'd like to clarify...
Say that again, Mr. Weber.
This will be a lease property. It will not be a fee property. The second thing I'd like to clarify is, we've been working this process with the ARB since July of 2021. So, we've been that includes meeting with the council. I think some of the members up here we met with in July of 2021 for over a year ago. So we've tried to be actively engaged. We've listened to many comments with the ARB. We've tried to go through and initiate the process as it's been described to us. There was a time where we put where we asked the landowner to, do what they felt they needed to do. I think that is when the petition to pull this out of the historic was done. That was not done by MAPCO. That was done by the landowner. I just to make sure that that is clear as well, because I think that misrepresentation is still kind of perceived that was MAPCO that initiated the submittal to pull this property out of the historic district. So I think with that...
Could you all hear that? Okay.
So I think going to the discussion about the site plan, if we can go to the next slide, please. So again, trying to touch on where I'd gotten started at before. This is the current design of the prototype. It is, like I said, it is a unique and I think one of the most well-designed convenience stores in the industry right now. I think some of the key aspects, as I already was talking about, was the transparency, the ability to bring in natural light, other key elements on these stores. We try to engage, murals within the store that kind of are dedicated to the community that we're within. We are intending and working with vendors to try to provide EV chargers. There is an enhanced landscaping, as you can see from the image. We surround the store with planters. We are adding planters underneath the canopy. Our light fixtures that we use are dark sky approved, meaning they work to eliminate any light trespass off the site. And then we have also recently partnered with One Tree Planted to plant 1 acre of trees for every acre that we developed. If you can go to the next slide. These next 2 slides are just showcasing what the store looks like. I think you will, as we get into some of the other images, you will see some of those exterior elements and some of the buildings that are within the Cottage Hill neighborhood. This is the inside of the store. We've already discussed the extent of the exterior. We can move past this. I think part of the discussion as to the site design that we have and why we have it is important. The use, our use, we are who we are. I can't deny that. We have a fuel canopy, we have a convenience store, we have parking for our customers. Those are part of our development, and those do impact how we lay the site out. The reason that we've chosen this site is, it's in our name. We are a convenience store. This store has 100,000, or this site has 100,000 vehicles driving by it every single day. For us to be survivable, those are our customers, and it needs to be convenient. That is one of the reasons we've chosen this site. We've also, we have 4 other stores in Montgomery. We see Montgomery growing. We would like to grow with Montgomery, and we think this is a great site to kind of showcase that growth. I will go back. I think that, we are probably one of the few suitable uses for a site that is located essentially on top of 84,000 cars driving by it on I-65. So I think that, I think because of that, I think that is one of the reasons we continue to pursue this site and have been pursuing the site for 16 months now. I also think, as you will see in some of the slides to follow, there is a limited presence of prepared food and basic grocery and convenience offering that I think we will be filling that need. And I also think, if you've been by this site during the day and especially at night, you'll know that there is a heavy amount of noise and light pollution put off by I-65. Our use is one of the few that can survive without any detrimental impact within that footprint of noise and light pollution. So those are just some of the basic rationales on why we chose this site. If you can go to the next slide, please. Next, sorry. Again, these are just showcasing that perimeter of the lack of grocery or prepared food. If you can go to the next slide, please. Again, this is the nearby restaurants. You will see there's only a few that are within that half-mile radius. Going to the next slide. This is our site plan imposed over the aerial of the site and the overall community. So, again, showing that we are right on top of the expressway. We are kind of a convergence point of the on and off ramp. So there, again, there is a huge amount of traffic that is passing by this site. If you go to the next one, please. This is the current site layout with the landscape plan. I'm not going to beat around the bush. You will see that there is a heavy amount of excavation. I mean, it is part of our site development in order for our site to function properly. I will say that what we've done is tried to. A number of questions have been brought up as to why we lay the site out this way. Why the canopy is where it is, why the building is where it is. I will say that the canopy has been brought as close to the interstate as possible because we feel that in most cases people perceive that to be the most offensive part of our development. We wanted that to be as close to the interstate because it's being directly underneath those 100-foot high lights that are illuminating I-65, that this canopy will essentially be absorbed by all that light. All the noise that is driving by on I-65 will override any of the noise that may be, any of the noise concerns that would be coming from the canopy. And so we've moved it as close to I-65 as we can. Also, in trying to be as considerate to the topography as possible, this layout allows us to do a kind of a stepping motion. From the street, step up to the canopy, step up to the building to diminish or decrease the amount of excavation where we still have a slope back there versus a retaining wall, which would be required if we were to rotate the building. We moved the building as close to Heron as we could to create a more pedestrian-friendly presence and to, kind of create a better street facade for the building against Heron. And as you can see in the lower left corner, we have done an enhanced kind of buffering to obscure any sight lines from a few of the residents on Martha that would have possible visibility of the canopy.
You've got 2 minutes.
Okay, you can go to the next slide. Again, I think these are showing some buildings that are within the Cottage Hill area. I think there is disagreement as to whether they should be or how their impact was or whether they drove the historic district. But this is to say these are commercial industrial uses. Our building, I think, is in line with that. And so I think, I don't think we are out of place in the exterior design of our building. If you go to the next slide. This is a 3D view of the building. If you go to the next slide. Front and rear elevation. Next slide, please. This is kind of showing our, as I said, we've been working on the site since 2020, working with the ARB since July of 21. This kind of shows our evolution. This is the Heron front. 2020 is what we normally would have. As we worked with ARB, we came up with what's on the lower right, and then on the upper left is kind of where we're at now, trying to kind of follow ARB's request for more of a street frontage on Heron. Next slide, please. This is the fuel canopy with our typical sign. Next slide, please. This is a bird's eye view of the development. Go to the next slide, please. This is a before and after from Holt and Heron. Next slide. This is kind of showing what the perspective would be from South Holt as you're looking at the property to kind of show that distance between some of the residential on Martha. Next street side, please. The night view, again, the pictures to the right indicate that light pollution coming off I-65 and how our store will be absorbed by much of it. Next slide, please. This is kind of just the design evolution from the initial concept in 2020 to where we are today. As you can see, we've pulled the building further to the south, reduced the number of pumps, anchored our canopy as far as we could from the residential components and as close to the interstate as possible. Long list of items that we've done, but in respect for time, if we can go to the next slide. And then these are kind of the benefits that we're trying to bring to the site. We believe ourselves to be the best and highest use. That is not the preferred use, but for this location, the best and highest use. Our proposal here is to remove a building that is in deterioration and can attract criminal activity. We will be investing $7 to $8 million in this. That is $7 to $8 million that probably will go to local contractors. That is $7 to $8 million that shows our commitment to this location and the community. We are trying to rehab and repair and replace new sidewalk to make this a more pedestrian-friendly area. We will work with the city to try to create a crosswalk along Heron. I know that was brought up in one of the meetings. And again, bringing in that we are able to provide on-site parking, and that does come with the excavation that I previously mentioned. And again, we are offering to provide EV chargers here to kind of, for those living in the neighborhood and those who try to, are traveling on the interstate that need a recharge. And then I think the next slide is the final slide. And again, this is, we would be honored to be a part of this community, to serve the neighborhood, to serve the city of Montgomery. And from there, I'll take any questions or let anyone else speak.
Discussion from the board?
Mr. Weber, I maybe missed it in the materials. What's the square footage of the building?
It's 5,600 square feet.
I have to say that I really appreciate the location of the building, the addition of glass on, is it Heron Street? So that it really appears to be a storefront. You've got a place to sit outside. It really has a relationship with a building to street that that I find you did what we asked you to do, and you did it successfully. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
More comments from the board?
You've stated that this is a prototype that has been used in other locations. How many other locations have you placed this building?
There have been 8 total, one other one in Montgomery.
Okay, so one of my concerns is that Cottage Hill District, okay, is a specific historic district. So therefore, in my opinion, a building that sits on this site needs to blend into the district in which it sits. Therefore, when I hear the word prototype, and I also will state, when you say prototype and that this building has been built on numerous sites, to me, that is not lending it to the nature of the site in which you are placing it. It is more you are finding a site that fits your need or a need, and you are placing the building there, and you are making it so that it fits into the ground and the site there. It's not necessarily blending into the district. So there is ways that you can do that, but it is not necessarily morphed and has been retrofitted to be able to look like it blends into the historic character of this site, okay, in this district. And so that's my biggest concern in this proposal, okay? I appreciate, again, like the chairman said, the difference in what you've moved and where you move things. The fact that there does appear to be less concrete on the site, the fact that the gas areas have gotten smaller, those moves I think are they're appreciated, yes. But at the same time, I feel if you look at the building itself, this is a very important location, okay, to the area and to Montgomery. And placing this building here and not blending it into the character of the other buildings that are around it does not benefit the historic district.
I would I would be a whole lot happier if it looked like a great big old Sinclair station and it was stucco and, you know, we had the curves and it looked historic. But I also think that if you look at the other parts, the more newly developed parts of the historic district, for example, that corner building with the colored panels that Nicole Mullines used to be in. I mean, we have a lot of variety from the mid-century that were modern architecture at the time. This doesn't, in that respect, this doesn't, it doesn't differ from what's happened in that area of the neighborhood in keeping up with the times. You know, we have modern buildings, we have plenty of modern buildings in that part of the neighborhood. If it were any closer to our small-scale development, I wouldn't make that argument at all. I realize that's not a popular idea, but it is true. As I said, if it looked like a great big old Sinclair station, I'd be a whole lot happier.
Well, I think we both would, but I still just don't think that it blends. I don't think you're blending it in to the nature of this site.
I don't think that anything that's in that 20th century developed part of the district where houses, cottages were obviously torn down to do it, I don't think any of that blends in and looks historic particularly. I remember back to the previous presentation where the representative from your company showed picture after picture that were just cringeworthy, because and I don't want another building that's going to have a useful life of 20 years that then becomes yet another cringeworthy building for the neighborhood to have to try to think of something to do with.
Yeah, I mean, we try to align ourselves with more of the commercial and industrial look. That is why, you know, I think that's why I feel that we fit that more appropriately than the residentials. I think us trying to fake a Queen Anne or Victorian style building would actually be more offensive. I also think, you know, for us, transparency is important. That's why we try to implement so much glass in these stores, and trying to bring in more of that residential architectural feel, you know, does not quite work with the ability to maximize on the glazing that we think is very important to the customer experience. One of the reasons we leaned more towards, trying to, stay with that, kind of expanded storefront presence that you see up on the screen right now, and why we feel we are relatively aligned with some of the buildings further down between Clay and Heron.
The thing that actually bothers me the most about this is I don't think the use is consistent with the neighborhood. It brings a large number of cars. It's not a neighborhood gas station where we're all going to get our oil changed and buy our tires. It is a place where travelers stop to get gasoline. And in that respect, brings a lot of strangers into our neighborhood that I find dangerous. Now, somebody who out there talked about guns, and the fact that it brings the kind of people who might think that it's okay to use firearms in the city closer to that neighborhood is very distressing to me. That's my primary concern about this project in this neighborhood, is that the use is not consistent with the residential neighborhood, which this largely has become.
Well, and my 2 cents, I understand your business model. Obviously, it's successful, and I'm sure, and it's good. Corporations, companies are to make money, make profits, and there is nothing wrong with that. Obviously, MAPCO is doing pretty good, or else, you think this is the best site or a good site, else you wouldn't want to put it here. And I think the primary reason you want to put it here is because, and nothing wrong with it, it's on the interstate. Like you said, you got 100,000 cars northbound, southbound every day.
Well, only the ones that are coming from the south are really going to want to stop here because it's going to be too hard to get to from the north.
Well, if you need gas, I've
Well, there's
done,
a
and I
gas station
understand,
right there on the side of the street.
I'm sure northbound, okay, 50, 60,000. I also agree, this is a large project, a huge building. And a lot of other places, I don't think anybody would have a second thought about it. But this land's in a historic district, and that, of course, is where we come in. And I agree. We all wish it were a Cloverdale service station or a Sinclair's, but we know you can't do that. That's not your business model. You can't change what you do for one store. It can't. Because if it were something like that, it wouldn't be profitable. Because the folks on that interstate probably wouldn't stop. But, again, my 2 cents.
I mean, I think our hope is to be able to serve both the community and the traveler. I mean, we're expecting both, but we want to be an active member in the community, and we try to in all of our stores. We try to be involved in the local community. This isn't, obviously profit is important, but it's not for us the only thing. As far as the safety, we are spending a lot of money on the property, and in order for it to be successful, it needs to feel safe. That is one of the reasons that we do offer free coffee to first responders. It is an incentive for police officers to stop into the store on a regular basis to kind of show that there is a presence to deter from any of those elements that I think are stereotypically applied to our use.
It would be, for the people in the neighborhood too, a place that's walkable to get a cup of coffee, to get something to eat, which does not exist.
Correct.
At this point.
Coffee shop, though.
Well, it's also...
Hilltop.
There's a coffee shop?
It's also located within a block of residential.
Oh, yeah, you're right, sorry.
One other comment. Have you ever ridden through the neighborhood? Have you ever ridden through Centennial Hill? Have you, and I'm not trying
Cottage
to...
Hill, not...
Cottage Hill, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
that's
Cottage
all
Hill.
A few times.
When you rode through and you went down the streets, did you feel the difference that the neighborhood has as far as how, the trees, how they arch across the streets and, it's just the ambiance. It's all that it is. I know there are so many words that I could probably use.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I think in the initial, when we initially looked at this site, that never dawned on us, because that ambience that you find on Martha, that ambience that you find on Clayton, that is not at all what you feel at this property. This property feels deserted. It feels, it is on top of the interstate. You're right. I move a block to the south. It is a completely different area.
Right.
But this site does not have that, and I'm not sure that can ever be, reflected or built again at this area, just because of the nature of what it is.
I differ with you just a bit, only because, and it's really not, I'm not speaking about the building itself, but I feel like greenery is very underrated sometimes. And while you all have done a great job with the plants, mature plants are what tend to lend itself to the ambiance, because that's what gives you shade in the heat. Like the little bushes are cute, but the trees and different colors in the fall, that's why he sits over there, because he knows everything about the trees, and he doesn't let people cut down trees and not put them back. Very infrequently does that happen. I would, if I could challenge anything else about this site because I have my own opinions about how things are going to end up. But if you all could somehow bring in a little more of the mature tree that's everywhere. I mean, if you Google just the neighborhood, you see the presence of the overgrowth of trees and how you can't see every single rooftop because there are these mature trees that have been there forever. And I know that you can't, put mature trees everywhere. Right. But specifically placed tend to still soften the edges of different things and give you a different ambiance. So that's my last little 2 cents.
Yeah, unfortunately, the slide that we have up shows very immature trees, and so it doesn't, our hope is that if we were to be approved, in 10 years, you would see a more mature tree, and we would strive to try to put in trees that maybe are a little more grown versus some saplings or something like that.
Our tree guy's awesome. He knows how to make them
I'll
grow
give him
really
a call.
fast.
Now, I do remember going to work up Perry Street one day, and Milton McGregor was working on his house, and it just looked like it always did. And then I came back and I went back up the street at lunch, and there were 20-foot crepe myrtles planted in front. You could do that. I'm sure that didn't cost very much. A giant tree spade,
We could do
digging
that,
big
yes.
holes, bringing in fully mature trees, yes.
Mr. McGregor could have a redwood put in his front yard if he'd have wanted it, probably. That's okay.
We are certainly open to that. I'm not a landscape architect or an arborist, but we would explore the most mature trees that we could put in.
Any comments from the audience? And different comments, if you can. Make reading the minutes more entertaining.
I'm Charlie Colvin from the Cloverdale Idlewild Association. Not directly tied to the Cottage Hill intersection, but we are very familiar with trying to protect our perimeter. And that's something that we are sensitive to. We want to be sensitive to MAPCO's brand. They've got one that they want. And this building appears to be a front line of their new brand and the way it's going to look. But it's totally inappropriate for that site in that neighborhood. Other corporations, McDonald's, Waffle House, and others have modified their brands. You don't see golden arches all over the place anymore. You see modified to fit in with the neighborhood and the places where they are. I really think MAPCO could do a better job of providing a building, a sites plan that is more in keeping with the transition into the neighborhood at Cottage Hill. And they say they'd be honored to be a part of the community. We'd be honored to have them look like they belong to the community. Thank you.
Lana Cavassa, and I'm a property owner in Cottage Hill. I just think you're very limited with the location of this property being next to the interstate. And I would rather see something developed there than I had to see vacant buildings that are being continue to be dilapidated.
Thank you.
Rob Hess, the Old Cloverdale Association. I'll echo Charlie's comments to be a little more brief. But I would like to make a comment about when I came here this evening, I was out and about and came down Atlanta Highway and passed a couple MAPCO stations. What's not shown in this picture, and it's a beautiful modern building that does not fit the neighborhood, but what's not shown are all the sale ads in the windows. So I just wanted to point that out and have the board keep that in mind as you vote.
Good evening. I'm Tara Sartorius. I live in the community. In fact, I have a studio and a business that is pretty much kind of diagonally across the street from this proposed location. What I see is a potential abomination for our neighborhood. This site has a lot of potential for a wonderful, welcoming place for people arriving in the city of Montgomery. I have listened in to city council meetings, and they're talking about how wonderful our civil rights and history is and the legacy of our community, and it seems as though this would be the most perfect site for a welcome center with a park-like entrance and some beautiful parking and a smaller building that welcomes people visiting the city and also helps educate people as to what all the wonderful opportunities are in the city. And a gas station that is a fluorescent box is not fitting with our neighborhood, and I think a lovely site could be developed here, and I strongly urge you to make a decision that gives more time for some consideration for other possibilities and not to pass this through as just yet another gas station, which we all know in our hearts is what's going to happen if you approve this building.
Jake Johnson, Cottage Hill Foundation. I will not reread what I just wrote a little while ago, but a couple things I wanted to reiterate. And once again, this is one of 9 of our remaining blocks. We were a small neighborhood, we're a vibrant neighborhood. The 9 blocks that are remaining are vibrant, and we don't want to lose any more real estate to the interstate. Cottage Hill is an excellent example of scale, orientation, and setback. It might be one of the greatest examples in the city of Montgomery when it comes to our buildings, our homes. This does not fit anything. The use cannot, in my opinion, fit the scale, orientation, or setback that is present within the neighborhood. Ultimately, this may try and mimic some of the commercial buildings that were developed later in the neighborhood, but ultimately the setback's still wrong. The amount of site that's developed is still wrong. Ultimately, we have an existing street frontage that is strong, and we're losing an entire street frontage, and we're basically in this proposal, the reconstruction is just a mere portion of what exists currently. Ultimately, MAPCO has a brand. Cottage Hill has a brand. Are those two things compatible? We have businesses in our district, Hilltop Public House being one, Funky Forte being another. They follow the process. They came in, they embraced the brand of Cottage Hill, and in turn, the neighborhood has embraced them. They have had our support the entire time, and they've been successful, I think, because of the way they approached the neighborhood, and the neighborhood then, in turn, supported them. And then one final comment, Cedric, I believe you mentioned earlier, the city has a block-by-block downtown action plan. It was released, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, very recently. And this site is set aside for infill residential development. Why are we spending money time and time again on downtown action plans and block-by-block development plans if we're just going to ignore them for the next development or a developer with a lot of money that comes in? We have a plan in place for a reason. Let's stick to the plans and processes that have been established and paid for by the city by the constituents' tax dollars.
Hi, Elizabeth Hadaway. I'm a resident of the neighborhood since 2010. I think I was here 5 years ago when the Capitol Inn was discussed and was eventually demolished without anything replacing it. It still looks the same as it does 5 years ago, and I walk by it every single day. And I just want to remind everyone here, if you haven't seen it in a while, you should go take a look. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm back. I talked too much, I know. I'm Nicholas Bartel. I'm still on Martha Street. One of the risks of my job is I do a lot of research. I have a law degree and I work in bureaucracy, so I read and research. I actually pulled the designation for the historic district today to get ready for the meeting. And the designation describes Cottage Hill as retaining the ambiance and scale of a middle-class Victorian community. That's not a bad gas station, and that's not a bad convenience store up there. Nothing about that retains the ambiance and scale of a middle-class Victorian community. And with respectful disagreement to the gentleman from MAPCO, he discussed the buildings that he believes are comparable, and he says there's disagreement as to whether or not they were included in the historic district. They are included designated and specifically discussed in the designation from the National Park Service. Specifically, they're discussed as significant intrusions into the neighborhood. They are specifically discussed as being inconsistent with the historic nature of the neighborhood. They're discussed as being inconsistent with the design of the neighborhood. And the question before you all today is really, really simple. Are we going to add another really significant intrusion to a small historic district and allow a very, very large development that is very different from what's there and is very inconsistent with the charm, with the scale, and with the ambiance of what we all know and love? I think there's a way to redevelop that site. I think I was pretty clear earlier. I don't think those buildings and everybody who voted for the demolition, I think that makes sense. They may very well not be savable, but I think there's something that can be done with that site to embrace the gateway to downtown. My predecessor said made sense to me. I don't understand why we would want to turn the downtown gateway to historic Montgomery into a large modern gas station sited in a small historic district built around a Victorian ambiance. It doesn't make sense to me. I respect all of your judgment, and thank you for your time, and thank you for the gentleman from MAPCO.
Hello, I'm Miriam Bourne. I'm from the Old Cloverdale neighborhood. I'm new here, but one of the reasons I moved here from New York is that Montgomery is a center of civil rights. It has Southern Poverty Law Center, it has Equal Justice Initiative, and this is an entry to this city. And I agree with the woman who said that a place that would welcome people into the city would be much more appropriate. I don't think this building is appropriate at all, but the site could be much better used for something which shows the character and the whole history and the potential of Montgomery. And I really think it should have something of an historic, welcoming nature that perhaps also touches on civil rights. That would be a use for it. And I would welcome that and think that that might go with the historic nature as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eve Harmon from the Cloverdale Idlewild Association. I think one of the reasons we have so many people from not just Cottage Hill but other neighborhoods speaking up is that we all know that this is a creeping threat to us all, where you have these incredibly important neighborhoods that we have built on the shoulders of people who have come before us, and where it provides us this through line from people who have come before to our children, possibly grandchildren, ideally. And then we have this creeping threat of businesses that have really no individuality coming in and taking away our individuality. One of the things I enjoyed most about the presentation we saw earlier, they showed 5 points with the Hilltop Pub, and they were empty storefronts then, but they've been rehabilitated, and they're now local businesses that actually kept the storefronts, and they actually let Landmarks Foundation go on tours to see how they were respecting the history and how they were updating it and incorporating it, and that matters. And then we have this, which you can't really say has historical integrity. I'm not sure I appreciate that they did what they did to try, but it isn't just that it doesn't fit in with the neighborhood, it's so commonplace. It's like you were talking, Isabel, about how there's this ambiance in the neighborhood, and then you see this storefront, and no, the empty lot or what's there right now isn't great, but it's definitely, I don't think this is the right direction, especially with how we have so many people from Cottage Hill here who have been against this from months ago, who are still against this, and it seems that MAPCO, while they're listening enough to put in some shrubbery and maybe some mature trees down the road, aren't listening to what the neighborhood wants, which is for them to not be here. So it's a really, this is something that does, right now it's only impacting Cottage Hill, but like Cloverdale Idlewild has Sahara, Old Cloverdale has some businesses that are attempting to come back. They had empty storefronts that have come back. And we can do better than MAPCO. So I just want to reiterate that, like so many people here, no thank you to MAPCO.
And that's time unless you want to recognize someone else.
My name is Glennon Benet. I'm a resident of the Garden District, 1349 South.
Does
that mean you're recognizing him?
I'm recognizing
I'm
you.
sorry, I
That's all right.
apologize. What I can't understand is the lack of foresight. I see nothing as a renewable resource as far as solar panels. This is a company whose model is dying. The internal combustion engine is dying. Look at the news. This will be obsolete in 10, maybe 15 years. So what are we going to have then? A vacant building with lots of broken glass?
We're good at that.
Yes. And the other thing is the amount of trash. I'm one of those who pick up 5 to 10 pounds of trash just in plastic wrappers a week. And these people are going to be pushing it out, and it's going to blow down through the entire community. It's a non-sustainable model.
I really thank everybody today who came and spoke in defense of their neighborhood and the place they lived. It really shows a lot of love and community spirit for the places that we live in Montgomery, which really is a great town and is a greater town than when I moved here. Christy, what do we need to do at this point? Okay, sure.
If it's okay, I'd like to say something. I am so excited to see not only Cottage Hills come, but Cloverdale, Idlewood, and Garden District coming. This is the first time I've ever sat here and saw everybody in the other historic districts come, and I really applaud you all for coming.
Thank you.
I'd like to say also, I've been doing a little Googling while I'm here. I saw that Cottage Hill started in the 1830s. It's an 1830s, that's almost 200 years old. It's on the Alabama Register of Historic Places in 1975. It's on the National Register of Historic Places in 1976. I mean, these things should not be pushed under the table. I think these are very important things, both that all the neighborhoods have come together to oppose this situation. It's not a bad building, but it's what we're saying is it's a bad building for this spot, is what the owners are saying. Business owners, I've also seen come here. I've seen other, you did not show them. There's several business owners, including the state, that has buildings here that are in keeping with the Cottage Hills neighborhood, and I'd rather see something like that. Finally, my point I'd like to say is Jake Johnson made it. The city has adopted a plan for this. It's new, and it really should have the opportunity to be explored for this spot. I think, you've got the hill, you've got things here. A place for the city welcome center would be lovely. I think there's maybe a better situation for this particular spot, and that's what I have to say.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Christy, how do we proceed from here?
Someone should make a motion.
All right.
Whatever motion you would like to make.
I move to deny the presenter replacement plan because the building design is not compatible and will materially impair the architecture and historic value of the historic district.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
1, 2, 3,
Opposed?
4, 5, 6.
All right.
Unanimous decision. So that said, there is an appeal process to circuit court within 30 days of that decision, should that be desired to be pursued.
And this, my understanding, this would not prevent MAPCO from sometime in the future representing.
Resubmitting a modified plan, correct.
That's it. All right.
And we welcome MAPCO into the city, but as others have said, it just doesn't
If you
feel
happen
like
to
what
make
we
it like
have
an
right
old
now.
Sinclair's,
This is site.
you might get a vote from me.
I'd love to see it just push one block north even.
All right.
Well, right next to the Heights, it may be a more fitting location for it.
Okay. A couple of announcements. Remember, November, December meetings are strange. We meet Wednesday, November 16th to avoid the week of Thanksgiving. That is also my last ARB meeting.
Why?
Because I'm leaving. I'm going back to work for the Alabama Historical Commission. So that will be my last meeting with the ARB.
Abandoning us.
So who is going to be our keeper?
That's a very good question. To be determined. And I have a call with the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions tomorrow to set up board training for sometime in late spring, early summer. They've been kind of lax on education requirements. Now that we're a certified local government, board members will have to have some sort of training.
Okay.
And we're hoping to do 4 courses, maybe split over 2 days. I think I've got 2 topics picked out that are HPC worthy, 2 that are more ARB relevant. And then of course, as they do webinars, if you watch any of those webinars or have to take any courses that are, for your own accreditation that may be relevant to this, then we would track that and that would count too, so.
Christy, thank you for everything you've done for us. We
Thank
really
you,
appreciate
ma'am.
it. Yeah, seriously.
Give you a hug in November.
Does this make you one of us now? Can you come on this side?
I'm not sure anyone would want to appoint me for a little while.
I think we're going
We
to
thank
file
you
a
for everything you
petition
do.
so you can't leave, Christian.
If there's no further business, we're adjourned.